Record. There. So you're so used to looking at something, you can lose the forest for the trees, right? There could be something that's like so painfully obvious that you've just been looking at it for 6 months or a year or weeks or hours or whatever the time frame is, and you got so used to seeing it, you don't realize it's wrong. Somebody else looks at it and they see it's wrong right away. So to give you an example of this, the person that did the shrine drawings, those of you that took the club trip to the shrine, one person in our office did the bulk of the architectural drawings. Okay, and it wasn't me. That person had a degree just like your degree, which was a 2-year degree, except he came from Wausau. And he did stacks of drawings, probably about 1.5 inches, and it was all done in CAD. Okay. So he had worked on this project for years of his life. It's not just a week he worked on the shrine. He worked on it for well over a year. I don't know if it was 2 years or 3 years or what, but it was definitely over a year. And my job was to come in and do a quality control review as a second set of eyes. Now, I had a little bit more experience in age, but I have to be honest with you, as far as level of skill and intelligence, this person was my equal or better than me. Okay. Did a spectacular job, very impressive person, very impressive professionally. So I wasn't there to because I knew a lot more, or I was a better drafter or a better architect or a better designer or better at putting buildings together. I was there just as a fresh set of eyes. And I spent 3 months on that project, red marking every drawing. And I looked at every line, I read every word, I looked at every dimension. I tried to put my mind on the mind of a contractor, what they need to know to build it. I tried to see, does this make sense from an architect's point of view or a designer's point of view? And I spent 3 months full time. That's all I did was QCR that, because we need to get that job right before it went out. We did not want, and there was 1 or 2 things. It wasn't like I red marked all over them, but some of them were just questions. You sure this is right? Or maybe we could do it another way. But one of the things I caught, and I don't even remember what it was something just because I was a fresh set of eyes. You know, that person had been working on it for years and years and years and years. And they just had gotten so used to it, they didn't see something that I could catch as a fresh set of eyes. Okay, so having said all that, I want you to do your QCR first when you think you're done. When you think you're done with your QCR, we're going to pair you up with another person that's done with their QCR, and you're going to look at their drawings and they're going to look at your drawings. Now, I could do it randomly with cards, but the problem is you're done and you worked hard on it and somebody's not done, whether or not they worked, and then you have to sit there and wait for them to get theirs done. And we're just gonna do it first come, pairs up with the next person that's done. And when I get 2 other people that tell me they're done, they're gonna pair up, and you're gonna QCR the other person's stuff, and they're gonna QCR your stuff. Then you're gonna turn it in. Okay, so now let's talk about what I wrote down this morning. So if this is the same, whether you're working in AutoCAD or you're working in Revit. You remember in AutoCAD, you had paper space and model space. You drew your stuff in model space. And then for printing, you had a window in paper space that showed your model space at whatever scale. Does that not nod your head if that rings a bell for you? Revit has the same thing. We have a sheet file. And then it's part of the Revit model, but it's a sheet place where we put all our various views in. And then we have the actual views, or the drafting view, or the floor plan view, or the elevation view. And then I can have a sheet where I'd have a drafting view, a floor plan view, and a elevation view. Okay. So what if we're doing items, and technically they could go either way. So I was just helping somebody, I even forgot who it was, but they had a north arrow on their structural plan, and their north arrow was on the actual foundation plan drawing and not on the sheet. And I told them that should logically be on the sheet, and I'm going to explain why I told them that. So the items related to the drawing, that they're actually touching the drawing and they refer to the drawing or they need to be on the drawing, they should go on that drawing file, not the sheet file. So dimensions, top of elevation notes, so like top of wall notes, because that's pointing to something on, if it's actually pointing to something on the drawing, it should go on the drawing. Okay. Now, if it's a general note, that's different. But if it's a leader note where the leader is actually touching something on the sheet, that should on the drawing, that should actually go on the drawing and not on the sheet file. Now remember, the leader touches the edge of the item being referred to. So if I've got a note that's talking about my footing somehow, I do not want to do this. Talk about the footing, and yeah, the footing's in that direction. You can figure out where it is. I don't want to do this. I want to do this. I want to actually touch the edge of the item. I don't want to touch the middle of the item or on the item. It's got to always be the edge. If I'm doing the wall, I want to touch the edge of the wall. I don't want to come out here and just kind of point, oh yeah, there's a wall over there. And I don't want to point into the middle of the wall. Okay. So now let's talk about the next thing. Items related to the sheet go on the sheet. So the drawing title on scale, Revit automatically puts it on the sheet. But on AutoCAD, you can put that wherever you want, right? AutoCAD doesn't idiot-proof a lot of stuff. So the drawing title on the scale, that has nothing to do with the actual floor plan. That's more with the sheet to tell how it goes on the sheet and what scale it's on. The north arrow should go on the sheet. And we're not going to play Where's Waldo with our north arrow. I've had people have north arrows in the middle of the floor plan. I'd have them floating out, in space somewhere. They should be next to the drawing title and scale. Your north arrow should be right after that. Does that make sense? That's all like our one-stop shop where we're finding that stuff. I gotta tell you a funny story. There's pictures on the internet of somebody went out, some idiot put their north arrow in the middle of their floor plan, and they went out onto their terrazzo floor. And there in the middle of their floor was their north arrow with little metal strips poured into the terrazzo floor. They had a north arrow in the middle of their floor plan because they put it in the wrong spot. And it's logical, right? Go ahead.
So for the north arrow, just like the way that we drew them, like Jen wanted like the pointing north like to be a filled region, but you can't fill the region if you don't draw it, if you draw it on the sheet.
Seriously. We'll have to look at that.
Okay.
Well, I'm telling you conceptually, now whether Revit lets us do it or not, conceptually.
No, yeah.
Yeah. Now there are north arrows available under annotation in Revit. Now, if you can't do a filled area by filling it in, you could go in and make your own family of north arrows with a filled area, but that's maybe a little early for where we are in our Revit journey. But anyway, I'm just telling you conceptually, we would like to have our north arrow on the sheet. Now in AutoCAD, you can do whatever you want, but Revit kind of, by making it idiot proof, they kind of limit you in ways they shouldn't sometimes. Excellent point. So all that stuff I want on the assignment, on the name of the assignment, name of the class, your name, date, that should all go on the sheet file, not on the drawing file. So what else should go on the sheet? Items that we want the freedom to move them on the sheet without moving the entire drawing, which are general notes and keynotes. So like if I've got all my notes together, I might want them on one part of the sheet or the other part of the sheet, and I don't want to have to move them on the drawing file and see where they end up on the sheet, and then move them on the drawing file and see where they end up on the sheet. So if I've got a list of notes that I want freedom to move them around in relation to the floor plan, I'm going to put them on the sheet file, not on the drawing file. Okay? Because they don't have arrows, they're not pointing to specific things. They might be general things like call digger's hotline before excavation. That doesn't need to be on the floor plan. That needs to be on the general notes along with all the other general notes. Okay, any questions on that? Okay, now let's move on to the next thing, dimensions. Logically, on a house or any building, any items that you're dimensioning to the exterior or on the exterior, you put the dimension strings on the exterior. And we'll get more into this in the next class, but if I'm doing windows, walls, in my foundation plan, I'm dimensioning my foundation wall to the exterior of the wall. Those strings should go on the outside of the building, not the inside. If I'm dimensioning interior partitions or things, I should put that on the inside of the building. Because otherwise you're trying to dimension, I've seen people try to dimension their inside wall location on the outside of the building, and they've tried to dimension their exterior window location on the inside of the building, and it gets really messy that way. So logically, stuff that's on the outside of the building or you're dimensioning to the outside should go on the outside of the building. Stuff on the inside of the building should go on the inside of the building. Now, when I had you do that assignment that's up here, we had an overall string furthest out, then we did the jigs and the jogs in the building, and then we did like the windows and door locations furthest in. That's the hierarchy and that still stays the same. Now, I had you do overall dimensions. Did I have you, I just want to check over here. Did I have you do all four side overalls? I think I did, just so that if there were problems with your string, you could pick it up. Yeah, I had an 84 on the top and an 84 on the bottom. Now, in what we're doing for this assignment, I probably don't need you to have an overall on all four sides, but I need one overall on the horizontal way, and I need one overall on the vertical way. Does that make sense? Now, so now I'm going to get into something where it's a little bit of a judgment call. We want to minimize dimensions to get the job done. But we also want to avoid having the contractors do a lot of addition math. And also we want to give an overall so they can check against the first floor plan. So let's do another example on the board here. And I don't know if you can you actually see my camera when you look at the recordings? I don't think you can, but you could if you're on Zoom, you can see the camera a little bit. Anyway, let's get me a black marker here. Oh, I put it on my desk. Okay. So what was I talking about? Oh yeah, minimize dimension, but avoiding having them do a lot of addition. Okay, so let's say we have a house or a plan that's got a lot of jigs and jogs on one side. And I'm giving them a dimension to all the jigs and jogs. Do I really need to give them an overall? If they can add up all those dimensions, they could get the overall, right? But I give them an overall because I don't want them to have to use math in the field to get that overall dimension. I don't want a contractor sitting out there adding feet and inches and eighths of an inch to come up with an overall dimension. So I give them an overall. Now on this bottom side here, I've got more jigs and jogs. So I guess what my point is, I'm going to give them one overall, but I don't have to give them one on the top and one on the bottom. Now that one I made you give overalls on all four sides, but on this project where we're trying to keep it clean and easy to read, I don't need to give them an overall on the bottom because I already gave them one overall on the top. Same thing with my left and right. I can give them one overall and then just do the jigs and jogs on the other side. So I don't want them to have to. So why do they need an overall? Well, they might be laying it out, on the site, or they might be trying to square up corners or whatever. They need to know that overall dimension. So the other thing is that if they did this the right way, the top of the outside face of the concrete will line up with the outside face of the studs, and they'll dimension their house to the studs. And then if this overall dimension is given, and then on the first floor plan, this overall dimension given, it gives them a very quick way of saying, oh yeah, my dimensions line up. There wasn't a mistake made on one of these plans, and it helps you that way too. You don't have to do the math. If your plans aren't lining up, you would know because, oh, my overall dimensions aren't the same and they're supposed to. I've got a problem here. Okay, so that's that. I'm on item 5 under dimensions. Pick which dimension makes the most sense. So like on our project, let me erase this and draw something. I'm not going to draw our project, but I'm going to draw a condition that we have similar in our project. We have a door opening. Okay, that little line there is my door opening. We have to locate that door opening so that they can form it out and put it in the right location. Because if they pour it wrong in the concrete, you're SOL to get your rest of your house dimensions to work out. If the concrete's screwed up, you either have to change your house dimensions or they got to go into the concrete saw and pour it over again or cut it out. So I want to give them this dimension. So where is it more? So this is item 5. If I'm dimensioning that door opening dimension, would it be more logical for me to dimension it to this way, the short dimension, or this way, the long dimension, or both? So think about that a little bit. I want to give them this dimension and I have to locate where that is in relation to the wall. So let's just say this door opening is 3'4", just for the sake of argument. They need to know where that thing is. Is it really close to one side? Is it in the middle of the wall? So would you give them, I'll call them A is the long dimension and B is the short dimension, or you give them A and B. So think about that. And I'm not going to ask you to show hands because I'm going to tell you what I think is the right answer on this. I would not give them, well, I'll tell you first off which one I would think. I would give them B. And why I would give them B is there's less chance of error if I got my tape measure out and I'm measuring 3 feet away than if I'm measuring 20 feet away. The tape measure is blowing and the wind's blowing, or somebody, it slips or something. It's a lot easier. I need 2 people to do this one, and this one I could probably get done by myself. So I'm gonna give them B. Why do I not give them A plus B? Because this is just one dimension that we really don't need, because we're giving them an overall somewhere else. We don't need to give them A and B. We give them the one that makes most sense. I definitely wouldn't give them just B and not give them A. Okay, does that make sense?
With regard to our foundation plan drawing, because there's that stoop, wouldn't you want to put the door on the inside? So that, because then you're not,
Oh, so where does that dimension string go, on the inside or the outside?
it should go on the inside, shouldn't it? Because you don't want.
Good, you're thinking, because it's gonna conflict with the other dimensions if you put it on the outside. Yeah, so that's a dimension, even though your wall dimensions are going on the outside, it's gonna make it more complicated to put that door location on the outside as well, because it's gonna conflict with it. So in that one, it makes more sense to put it on the inside. These are general strategies. They're not 100% hard and fast rules. So if you ask me, just going off of memory, looking at this, would you recommend me putting that door location dimension on the inside or on the outside? I would put it on the inside because there's less things in the way of that dimension. It's clearer and it's easier to read. So excellent point. Okay. So now let's talk about elevation tags. Similarly, so I'm going to draw my footing lines dashed here. So am I going to put my elevation tags where it says top of wall or top of footing? Am I going to put them all on the outside? So this one is going to be EOF 100, and this is going to be, or 90, and this is going to be 900, and this is going to be top of wall. Let's just make it top of footing 9, top of wall 10. Okay. Do I want to put them all on the outside? Do I want to put them all on the inside? Do I want to put top of walls on the outside and top of footings on the inside? That's something I'm going to leave up to you to decide. I'm not going to tell you the right way, but there's 3 different choices. If we put everything on the outside, that means my dimension strings ideally should be out there, because otherwise my dimension strings are gonna cross my leader lines. We don't want that. So that means all my dimension strings need to move out. If I put them on the inside, that means I don't have to cross the dimension strings that are on the outside of the building. So I can't give you a rule that stops you from having to think and look at your plans. But there's really three logical options. We put everything on the outside, we put everything on the inside, or we put the top of footings on one side and the top of wall on the other, and we separate them. Okay. So that's top of elevation tags. Now, you probably thought, how are we going to spend any time at all QCRing this stupid little simple assignment? But in order to get a clear, easy to read plan, you have to think about all these things. Now, after you've been doing it for decades, you just kind of don't have to think about it. But when you're starting out, you have to think about everything because you don't have that, don't have enough experience yet doing this to know which would be the right way to do it. Now let's talk about leaders. Let's get over here. We want to avoid leaders crossing dimensions or each other. So we do not want our dimension string there with the leader going across it. We do not want a leader pointing to the something and it crossing another leader. Big no-no. Again, we're trying to make it easier for the contractor to build this. Now remember in Revit, you can get multiple leaders from one node. So if I have an item here and I want to point to something here and here, I don't have to have a node and then another node here. I can have one node with two leaders that come off of it. Okay, so Revit has a way to add leaders. Now, there are three different kinds of leaders you can have in Revit. So here's my words, and I'll do it with different colors. There marker around here somewhere. Okay. So one of them is called a two-segment leader, and that first segment is typically horizontal. One of them is called a straight leader, where it just comes off like that. And then the blue one is called a curved leader, where it comes out like this. Of the three, I prefer the two-segment leader with a horizontal line coming out of the node. Reason is, if you look at these three, I don't know if they're hidden behind my monitor. If I've got these coming out at different angles, there's never anything consistent. It's all these wacky lines coming out at whatever angle they're coming out. But when I have this horizontal line segment coming out, that's always consistent and your eye kind of settles down. Oh, there's always going to be a horizontal line and then it points out. So I don't like these two because they're too much variability in how they look like. And to even take it to another step, if I have a leader that starts out like this and it works pretty good, that one's a pretty extreme one. Let me make it less extreme here. So if I have a leader I start using that looks like that, I'll actually copy that down so that all my leaders have the same angle, and then I can adjust them or tweak them a little bit, but I don't want to have all these wacky angles, like some coming out at 180, 179 degrees, some coming out pointing this way, some coming out pointing that way. I try to keep it like, if I can standardize at a certain angle as I'm copying a bunch of notes down in a row, I'll standardize on that angle and just adjust it a little bit as needed. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's my preference on the leaders. Leaders from the left should have left aligned to text. Leaders from the right should have right aligned text. So what I'm talking about is this is a leader coming off of the left. If I have multi-line text, it should be aligned to the left side. If I have my leader coming out from the right and I have multi-line text, it should be aligned from the right side. What should go on group general notes versus individual notes? If it makes sense to point on or be on the drawing, it should be an individual note located on the drawing. If it's not, it should be grouped with other general notes. So when I talked about footing should be 4 feet below grade minimum, and top of grade should be 8 inches minimum below top of foundation wall, that doesn't need to point to anything on the drawing. That can go on general notes. Okay, so when you read the general notes on the PowerPoint, most of those are, it should be all those items don't actually have to point to something on the drawing. So where do we put our general notes on this sheet? So if we're looking at our sheet, they're typically stapled on the left-hand side. So if they were printed out, they open up with the staples and the binding on the left-hand side. So do we want to put our general notes on the left-hand side or on the right-hand side? We want to put them on the right-hand side because we're referring to them all the time. So typically they would be closer to the right-hand side, and our drawings, if we have a choice, would be closer to the right-hand side because there's an area of like 3 or 4 inches where that's stapled, where it's really a pain to open them all the way up and look like where the other sheets are curled around. Now, we only have one sheet, so we're not worried about it on this little project. But I've shown you the plans for this building that were done in AutoCAD, right? I can barely lift them. When those are, you want to have all your most important information on the right-hand side of the sheet and leave that left-hand side of the sheet blank because that's where all the staples and everything go. Okay, so I've talked for, believe it or not, a half an hour about how to do your QCR. So I'm going to let you do that. Use this as a checklist. Use the assignment as a checklist. Do your QCR. When you're done, come up here and I'm going to put your name on the board and it'll be like, okay, this person's waiting for the next person to get done to partner up to do switch plans and do their QCR. And then you're going to print these out and turn them in. So for doing the QCR, I want them printed out. And that's the other thing. You can stare at something on a computer screen forever and it makes sense, but then you print it out and you realize, oh, I can't read this. You know, the line's not big enough or the font's not big enough. So I want you to print it out to scale. I've got a scale up here. We'll check it to make sure it's to scale. And then do your QCR with a red pencil on the hard copy and fix it in the Revit world. And then when you're printing something out for somebody else, print another copy out and let them red mark it for scratch. Yes.
Were there specific keynotes we were supposed to put?
I did not require you to use keynotes on this assignment. You can do it if you want to, but that's kind of more advanced. Good question. Any other questions? Keynotes actually have, okay, so if I want something I don't want to put like the actual writing on the drawing because I've got like an 1/8 inch scale plan and all the writing's going to get in the way on a commercial plan. They do keynotes, which is instead of doing all the writing, they do like a little circle with a 1 in it or something like that. And then the keynotes would say number 1, and then it's got 6 lines of text. Whereas if I'm doing an 1/8 inch floor plan, I can't put 6 lines of text in every office, but I can put a 1 keynote on it. That's what a keynote is. Okay. Other good question. Any other questions? Okay, got the rest of the class to work on this. Let's try to do the best job we can. You're gonna see that all this stuff that we talked about makes a difference, not only in your grade, obviously, but how easy it is to read and how clean and aesthetically pleasing it is. Because if it looks good, it typically works good. And if it looks confusing and like nobody thought about it, everything's crossing each other, it won't work good for the contractors in the field to build off of it. Okay, that's all I got. Thank you.